Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Subtle Asian Voices. And today we're going to explore a little bit about biracial life. And we have a very awesome guest here with us today. And here it is, Andre Ball. And if you have any questions, please post them in the live chat. And let's go. So, Andre, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Norman, and I appreciate the introduction. So my name's Andre. I identify as a half Filipino American and half African American male. I was born in the Philippines in 1985, and I lived in the Philippines for about 5 years. And then after that, my family essentially moved from the Philippines to the United States. It was like 1990, just about right before Mount Pinatubo exploded, or that eruption occurred in the Philippines, I remember. And we drove cross country, flew from the Philippines, landed in California, had family in Chicago, stopped off there, moved to Florida. I pretty much lived in Florida my whole life, up until where I decided to move for work. And I moved from Florida, went to the University of Florida for my undergraduate, moved out to Austin, Texas, and worked for a nonprofit out there. And then I moved to DC, where I'm at right now. And I've been living in DC for about, it's been like 6 or 7 years now. So
wow.
Yeah, DC's been home for me for a little bit. I mean, it's been kind of a crazy ride, but I think it's been a ride that's been full of like really awesome experiences. For me, it's just been life, just like anyone else, really.
Yeah, I think that's the whole point, just to get to experience and tell your side of your story. And then, but let's start from the beginning, right? Let's find out how your parents met in the first place. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. It's interesting. I remember asking my parents this when I was really young, and I got like two iterations, but the complete story, from what I'm aware, is both of my parents, they worked on an Air Force base. So my dad was in the military, and there was a Air Force base in the Philippines called Clark Air Force Base. And my dad was, I think he was stationed out there for quite some time. And my mom, she got a job as a secretary out on the Air Force Base. And my mom told me that she worked at my dad's office. At the time, she wasn't interested in dating. She was just really interested in, working and making sure she got through school and things like that. And she was thinking about going to nursing school and all this other stuff. But my mom met my dad in the office, and she told me that my dad essentially tried to ask her out the first time, and my mom said no. And so my dad, being kind of this charismatic like guy that doesn't give up, he like said, okay, well, what do I need to do to get you to go out on a date with me? And my mom said, well, I've been talking to my friends, and my friends said, if you can take us all out to lunch, and maybe, I don't know, like 8 or 10 friends, right, then maybe I'll go out on a date with you. And so my dad was like, okay, yeah, sure, let's all go. So he treated like 10 people, I think, out to lunch, and that's how they first met. Technically, I think, the first date. So
okay,
that was the smooth operator that my dad was. Yeah. And then the second iteration, which was really interesting, was apparently my mom knew my dad's cousin. My dad's cousin was also in the military, but he was stationed there. They met briefly through friends, and they knew each other. And my uncle, essentially, he wanted to introduce my mom to my dad earlier on, but my mom said no. And then when they met up again, like a little later on after they started dating, they were like, I know you, like we met before. So there was that connection too, which was really interesting. So yeah, that's how my mom and dad met
Okay.
back then. So.
Did one person have like a different story from the other, or was pretty consistent from both sides?
It was pretty consistent, I think.
Okay.
My dad gives it from his perspective, but they were pretty on the nose.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So once everybody all got settled in and like moved back to the States, right? Like how was your childhood like? Like how like how'd you grow up? Like what was your experience as a child living in the States as a biracial person?
Yeah, so that's interesting because, I said I was born in the Philippines. So um, it's really interesting because I remember so much about growing up in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
and the atmosphere there was different. I remember going to the marketplace with my mom, and we get on these buses, and we drive through the streets. And in the Philippines, like things are, not as for certain places, they're not as sophisticated or built up. Some of the
Mm-hmm.
buildings aren't as nice. They have like people selling things all over the place. The streets were like made of dirt in some places. So I remember all of that. And one of the memories that really stood out to me was just like kids, that didn't have any clothes and were poor, and they would be digging through the trash can, and they would essentially be trying to find something to eat. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember that memory sticking out in my head, and that having a huge impact on me and how I viewed what life was like for certain people there.
Mm-hmm.
Once we moved to the States, that piece of the Philippines, not just that side, but other pieces too, uh, food, familiarity, like friends, all that other stuff, it completely shifted. You're like
Mm-hmm.
5 or 6 years old, you pack up everything and you move over to the United States. And like for me, my first experience moving over here was just kind of like a whirlwind. I'm sure a lot of other people could relate to this, for people who've moved from another country to,
Mm-hmm.
to some different place. It just happened so quickly. I just noticed everyone was moving at this enormous speed. Like people had somewhere to go, something to do. Buildings were like crazy tall. There were a ton of cars on the road. I went to Disney World and we kind of experienced all that kind of stuff. And
Okay.
for me, as a 5 or 6 year old kid, the first 2 months you come in and you experience all this stuff and you go to Disney World, it's like, oh my God, this is like, this is all, a lot. It's a lot as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But the one nice thing about being young, I guess, and coming over is that you can adapt very quickly. Things come and you just kind of accept things as they are. You're like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
that's why this thing happens. Oh, this is what happens while I'm here. So I was just kind of absorbing everything when I moved over here. So my first years here, well, my first couple of years here were really about me just kind of getting my bearings and learning like what was what and who was who. Because the other piece of it was that I was being introduced to my like my dad's side of the
Mm-hmm.
family, who lived here, and they've never met me and they never met my mom. So that experience in itself was also another piece of me trying to understand like what this life was and my family and who I was and everything like that. So meeting them for the first time was a big, big, big thing for me. And it was a really awesome experience, obviously. And for me, having that connection here and knowing that I have like this huge, not even just a family, but a really big family. Energy, like my dad had me when he was older. So I had
Mm-hmm.
first cousins that were 20, 30 years older than me.
Oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. I have like second cousins who are like, maybe 10, 5, 10 years older than me and that like,
Mm-hmm.
so I have a very large family here. So getting caught up with all of that, getting, and meeting them and understanding, who they were was something that was very important when I first moved here and understanding that. So growing up with that and growing up with meeting or the initial meeting and growing up with them was a very important thing. And after meeting them, we moved to Florida, and then Florida was just a different experience in itself. That was just kind of me actually growing up, like
Right.
as people usually do when they grow up.
So like I would like when you first met your dad's family, right? Like did they have any questions for you? Like were they curious about like where you're from? Because I'm sure like they didn't think like because you didn't look exactly like them, right? So did they have some kind of like questions for you in terms of like how was life in the Philippines or like, what kind of food you like did you miss anything from the Philippines as well too? Like what was that like that interaction between your dad's family and then like trying to like understand like what they're asking? Like did you understand?
Yeah, so that was also interesting. I think again for me it was uh, some of the initial questions I think that came around was uh, you know um, what are the things you like? Are there
Mm-hmm.
things that you? I think they did a lot to try and make me feel comfortable, because they knew I was new to all of these places and things. And then at the same time, I also think they understood I was a kid, so they were
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, let's take him to all these places, and also just do the things that like hang out with your cousins that are around your age, and do things that you would do with other kids."
Okay.
But yeah, some of the questions I think that I got were like, oh, like uh, what do you miss sometimes? But like, and I think again because I'm a kid, they're trying to introduce me to a lot of these different things. They'll be like, so like here's like a pole sausage. Like, do you like ketchup on this? Is there other foods that you would like to eat?
Mm-hmm.
But I think what's interesting about like you mentioning like how I look, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's interesting from that perspective because when I got there, it's changed over time, but my family will automatically say, "Oh my goodness, you look exactly like your dad." Like
Wow.
they will say, "Oh, you look just like him. I could totally see how you look just like your father."
Mm-hmm.
And uh, for a lot of my mom's friends and then a lot of my family in the Philippines, they will say the opposite. They'll say, "You look like your mom. You look like your grandpa. You look like
Uh-huh.
you." I can totally see these Filipino features. You have your mom's nose and eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and then again, when I was in Chicago, and still when I'm in Chicago, they say you look just like your dad when he was like 27 or something like that. And
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's hilarious. So,
Like
um,
like
but
did you
mhm.
think like they were trying to bring you on as as their on their side like trying to like say like you're black or like you're Filipino like are were they trying to like take sides and sort of like like you know get you as one of them, right? Like try to put you into that one side, like because it feels like it makes sense that they're trying to like like bring you as their own, right? Like I don't know. Remember that draft, that race draft with Key and Peele,
The race
where they're trying to
against
draft
yourself.
one
Yeah,
side or the other. So I
yeah,
feel like it's kind of like that, right? Where they're trying to like take you into one side or the other, right? Uh,
yeah. I mean, so I think for me, I legitimately think that your for them their perspectives were, and for a lot of my family members, that they think because maybe that's what they're really exposed to, or that
mhm.
because I am my father's son, they'll say I can totally see, like, because they're the features and that they want to see, in
Right.
my face or in my figure. And they've been around my dad a lot, and they've been around a lot of black people a lot, and everything like that. So I think that kind of shapes the perception. As far as just kind of like bringing me over, I think how it works, or how it happened was, I think they wanted to bring me into the fold. They bring me in as a part of the family,
Hmm.
and they and again, as a kid, when I first came in, they didn't want me to feel uh, like I was on the outside. They wanted me to feel like I was a part of the family. And
Hmm.
so I think they also tried really hard not to get me to miss, leaving, because as a kid, you don't want to upset a kid. You don't want to make him miss these things and then like, make him cry or something like.
Hmm.
So I think for my family, it wasn't so much as choosing a side. I think they just
Okay.
they saw me, and if you saw me as a kid, and even now, like I was black, like I looked black. I mean, I wasn't super dark, but like I'm black, So
Hmm.
they see that, and it's not about. I don't think it was about like bringing me over as you know black person, African American person, as opposed to a Filipino and black person or Filipino person. I think it was more of just we're your family. This is us, and this is your side
Hmm.
of the family,
Hmm.
and we want to introduce you to that because this is part of who you are. And
Right.
it was never like a push and pull. Like we're bringing
Okay.
you over. It was more of like this is the part of your family that's your dad's side of the family, and is
Mm.
your family too. And they were we're very proud of our family history. But I think family is the crux or the core of it.
Hmm.
So but yeah, but they also recognize that the Filipino piece of it. um I think though my mom really kind of anchored a lot of that in for me,
Hmm.
and like just as part of my identity, and that Filipino piece of it. You know, so whenever I think about it, I think about that my mom had a big impact in solidifying my identity. But again, no push and pull. It was more of like,
Okay.
yeah,
Like a blended family, right? So
yeah,
like get to
yeah,
experience everything and just immerse yourself into both cultures, right? So in terms of
yeah.
that, like what was your best like your favorite parts about being biracial, right? Right? What's your favorite parts of like is it the food or is it the culture? Like what's the best your favorite parts of being biracial?
So I think my favorite part of being biracial is just the richness in culture. I think for me, I really appreciate a lot of the nuances, a lot of the things that make people special. And I think what's really cool about being biracial, or someone who has a lot of different cultural influences, is just the rich history and culture, if you're able to understand where you're from and what that's about. I remember when I was a kid, my mom, even now, we would go to Filipino, we would have picnics every Sunday, and the Filipino community in Florida is huge. And every Sunday, everybody would bring food, amazing food, and we go to the park, and I play with everybody, and then we would just eat and talk and have a great time. And as I got older, I realized that not everybody did this, and not everybody
Mm,
came together. I mean, people did for sure, but like, you know, did this specific activity is a thing that they did every Sunday. And
hmm.
I felt really fortunate. I felt lucky. It really contributed to how I grew up in my childhood, and it was great. And then again, from, you know, my African American or Black side, it's awesome. My family is awesome. We have such a rich history and culture, and the family on my dad's side, like, everybody's their own person, but like we have some like really awesome people. And it's just great to hear like what people in my family from both sides have done, and just where we've come from. And
Hmm.
so just knowing and being a part of both of those on a personal level is really cool.
Hmm.
um so that's I think that's the best part of being biracial, just being able to live live in those cultures and experience those things on both sides.
Right. Like
Yeah.
it just makes life more interesting, right? Like where you have like so many different things that's available to you.
Mhm.
And like, did you notice anything like similar in terms of in terms of the two cultures that maybe you think about? Like, oh wow, I can actually blend this together, and like maybe like create something new for yourself, where like you're able to like create a new identity, where like you're able to blend both things together. Like just
So for me, the similarities I think come in, and I bring up family a lot, but the
mm-hmm,
family dynamics are very similar.
mm-hmm,
I think that there is this there's this unity that exists for my dad's side of the family and how connected everyone feels and how important that connection is. And
mm-hmm,
then even on my mom's side, that connection is also extremely important, and family is very important in understanding where you're coming from. So I think there's definitely a similarity with that, with how the perception of family is from both
mm-hmm,
sides.
mm-hmm,
And I think bringing those together just makes it even stronger. I think it's interesting because you have people on one side of the world, and then you have people on the other side here, but they
mm-hmm,
both treat family very similarly,
mm-hmm,
and now you're bringing two families essentially together, um, mixing it, but it still has the same type of like that same mindset,
mm-hmm.
just that it just exists in different places.
Right.
So I think that similarities there for sure. I also think for me growing up, um, I think there's also similarity in a mindset of like how you would, I guess, how you would appreciate the world. I think for me, my mom grew up in a place where not everybody was rich. She
Mm-hmm,
actually she grew up poor. And for my dad, he grew up. Um, his father actually died. My mom's parents died, and he grew up having to be the man of the house. And his family wasn't the richest. They were kind of poor as well. So those experiences as well were very similar for the both of them. So they
mm-hmm,
took those experiences and brought it to how they essentially wanted to put together family and raise kids. So they kind
mm-hmm.
of raised us with a similar mentality of appreciating what you have, and not taking for granted like a lot of the things that you can achieve through hard work and school,
Mm-hmm.
and just being a good person. So again, very similar experiences, but from different places. And
Mm-hmm.
they brought it together to raise their kids in a similar kind of mindset, which is very
Right.
interesting to know.
Right. And it all goes back to the point where like, we're all just human, right? We're basically, the same people, right? We're just maybe from different parts of the world and maybe we speak a little bit different language, but in the essence, in our hearts, we're basically the same people, right? So I think that's very important. And that's just makes sense that even though you're from different parts of the world, it's like once you bring it together, like eventually you're gonna find something similar and appreciate it, right? So that's very cool to see
Yeah,
that happen. And
yeah.
let's get some to like something a little more like fun, I guess, right? So like in terms of like the food wise, right? Like what did you like between like your Filipino side and your black side? Like did you have anything that you really like thought, well, wow, this is something that I have to eat when you go back home,
Oh
or
yeah,
something you have to share?
definitely. Oh my gosh, I have tons because I love
Mm.
food. So from my dad's side, my African American, my yeah, my dad's side in Chicago, we are a huge barbecue culture. Okay, so
Mm.
every 2 to 3 years, my family actually hosts a barbecue competition, a rib
Ooh,
competition.
okay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's serious. This has been going on for a long time, and so
Uh-huh.
we take barbecue very seriously. My uncle, my dad's younger brother, he won the competition. I think it was like 4 or 5 years in a row, So if I had a go-to, like it would probably be barbecue ribs. Oh man, for my dad's side, my uncle also fries these. Have you ever had rib tips? Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
oh yeah, amazing stuff. He fries these rib tips and like it's probably the best thing I've ever tasted. So that's one, and then of course Chicago Polish sausage is also like one of my go-tos if I go back to Chicago, which is really great. And then for my mom's side, I have a long list. My mom's a great cook, but she always makes like, and I know this is a staple, and if you listen to me just say this, but like lumpia, of course, is like the
Yeah.
staple Filipino food. Everybody knows it. But my mom is like a ham sandwich. Okay, I think there are two dishes in the Filipino culture that you can judge somebody's cooking is lumpia and adobo. Okay,
Right.
like the ham and cheese of of the Filipino dishes. And my mom makes and I guess every son of a Filipino mom would say this, but my mom makes the best lumpia, perfectly like rolled lumpia with the right amount of like vegetables, carrots, and pork. She's the best. And then uh, adobo, like the best adobo. I can't. I tried to recreate it, and I couldn't do it. And I've had a ton of adobo at a ton of other people's houses, and I'm not ratting on them or whatever. But my mom has the best. So those two, lumpia and adobo, from my mom's side, and ribs, yeah, on my dad's side. I think those are the two foods that I have to go to.
Has your mom tried to enter your dad's family's barbecue competitions with her adobo at all, or because I feel like doing adobo with barbecue would be pretty interesting. Pork adobo.
Oh man,
ribs.
Actually, that's a good idea. I'll let her know. There was one year. I think she was thinking about doing it, but I think she prefers to eat the ribs as opposed to make them. But actually, that's not a bad idea. I might have to present that idea, and maybe I'll enter and I'll throw it. Maybe it'll be a team kind of a team entry. Like my mom can make like pieces of it, and maybe I can help cook it. That would be really cool.
Yeah, because you can do a little learning as well too. Like watching her cook. Just taking the secrets from her and just learning all the good stuff. Because I think it's a pretty good mix if you try to do like barbecue ribs with adobo sauces or like just put something new. Like wow. So have you ever thought about that? Like just like combining the two cultures' foods and just like trying to like figure out like what will make sense. That would be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great idea, honestly. The idea of combining, I think, two different cuisines. We've definitely, my mom and my dad, they've both experimented with like combining different cuisines. I'm trying to think of a dish. Like I think just like anybody who like would experiment with food. I'm trying to like, I remember my mom, I think she was making, I can't remember. I think it was, oh shoot, pancit. So it's like this, it's like it's a rice noodle with like soy sauce and celery and carrots. And then you put like, any type of meat really you want in it. I think she mixed that with this like fried shrimp that my dad and my mom cooked, and it's really good. So she put these like fried shrimp in the pancit, and it was really good. So like putting those two together, and again, like anybody can experiment with different things, but it just so happened that we cooked this fried shrimp, and my mom made pancit. And it turned out really good. It turned out great, actually. So
I'll take. Have a favorite?
I'm gonna take that idea, Norman. If I win, I'm gonna let you know.
Good. I want to try some out if whenever I come up.
Yeah, man. I'm not gonna. I'll have to practice so that I don't give you a batch that's like completely horrible. But
Uh,
absolutely, I will make you some.
yeah, sounds good. Like, did your dad have like a favorite dish, like Filipino dish, or
My dad's a garbage disposal, so he'll eat
he'll eat anything?
anything, honestly.
Okay.
But if there was a favorite one, um, I think I don't think he has a favorite Filipino dish.
Mm,
Uh,
okay.
again, I think he'll eat anything.
Mm,
Uh, yeah, I can't say there's one. He like eats a ton of food. So
okay. All right.
yeah, but I think he'll eat yeah, I'm not even gonna. There's like 50 things that he could eat.
Right. So he's just a food lover then, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
That's good. At least he tries and eats it all, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Like a lot of people, like, is there something that maybe your family, like your dad's side, right? Something that they wouldn't try?
Mm. Yeah,
Maybe
definitely.
sisig, maybe,
Oh, oh, they
or
totally try Sisig, man. They would
okay,
absolutely try Sisig.
or deniguan,
Again?
the deniguan,
Then it go, so they would try it. Okay,
okay,
there's some people who wouldn't, but there would be some. I know some people that would.
okay,
Um, there is a dish that they definitely wouldn't try. They would not try the what do you call it? What is it called? The shoot, it's the duck egg. The
oh, balut,
balut. Oh my God, yes. They
yeah,
would not. I don't know anybody who would do it. I
yeah,
did
me
it
neither.
when I was a
Me
kid.
neither.
Did you? Have you tried it?
I've seen it. I've like tasted it a little bit, but like I'm like, it just looks a little bit too crazy to me, I guess.
Exotic, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a funny story with that. So when I was a kid, I loved balut.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, she would make some, and I would drink the soup, and I would love it. And then one day, my mom, she said, "Andre, do you want to see what's inside?" And I said,
Ooh.
"Yeah, yeah." And so she cracked it open, and
Uh-huh.
right when I saw that bird
Uh-huh.
inside the egg, I freaked out. I was like, "Oh no, no more! I don't want to eat blue anymore. I don't want it no more." And so from that day on, I have not had blue since that
Wow.
day. Since that day,
Uh,
4 or 5 years old, I'll never forget it. So I
so
don't
still
think
to
they'll.
this day.
Yeah. Yeah. So Balut's one for sure. I know that they will.
Okay.
Yeah. There might
Does
be
your
some
wife,
adventurous people though to try it, I guess.
yeah, does your wife like, has she tried it yet? Balut or
No, she hasn't tried it.
ooh.
So I will not dare her to try anything I won't. So if I dare her, she'll
Okay.
be like, "You eat some first, and then maybe."
Okay. Right. Okay.
But yeah.
So okay. So like do you have any siblings? Like how were how were their experience compared to yours? Was it different or was it pretty similar?
So yeah, actually, well, I have two siblings. I have two younger
Mm-hmm.
sisters. I'm the oldest, and so for them, I think it was similar in some respects, but different because
Mm-hmm.
they're both girls, and so growing up for them was different. And I think um, so similar in a way that I think for me, how you try to navigate who you are and your identity. Going to
Mm-hmm.
school, we all went to school at the same place, like not the same place, but for me and my second youngest, we went to the same school in elementary school. We went to this private school, which was an experience in itself. And we went to the same high school. And then for my youngest sister, she went to the same private school for a little bit, and then she went to different schools. So her school experiences were different. But growing up in that and growing up in that school was just a thing in its own. It was similar for us, I think. But again, it was different
Mm-hmm.
because I think for my sisters, they had to figure out different things. So one of the big things I think was just kind of like, trying to fit in as, you know, themselves as people who would want to, or students or kids or classmates or friends who want to fit in at school. But
Mm-hmm.
then also as, you know, girls who want to fit in at a school, like they kind of had to figure that out. So I think our some of the pieces are similar, and some of those things are very different.
Right.
Mm,
So
uh,
like once you got into those schools, right, high school or middle school or whichever parts of your academic life, right? Like what were some of the issues that other kids would, you know, give you, or like maybe like ask you questions in terms of your life, right? Like what was the experience like?
yeah. So again, and it's different for everybody. Everybody has these
Mm-hmm.
different experiences. I just wanted to throw that out there as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and those experiences are based off of a lot of different things, like your personality, where you grew up, how you're raised, you know, things like that. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, again, my mom's Filipino, my dad's African American, and I grew up on the East Coast, in Florida. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
that's in itself. I grew up in a small town, and then going to school in a private school was a different thing altogether versus public school. So for me, growing up, going to school, I think one of the questions that I usually got, or some of the issues that usually presented themselves was, the schools I went to, I pretty much was like one of a few minority students in the school, like one of the few black people in the
Mm-hmm.
school. I remember when I went to my these schools, I was probably one of maybe four or five
Mm-hmm.
black people at the school, and out of like maybe a school population of maybe 250 kids or so.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so that in itself was, I don't want to say it was an issue, but there were definitely questions that came up, and there were definitely people that didn't look like me. So, but for me growing up, I think the challenges were essentially just, I think for some of those people, I don't say people, but growing up, it was very difficult to make friends initially because I think I didn't maybe look, I don't want to say I looked familiar, but like I think that coming into a school where maybe you have kids who, either grew up together or have families that work together, that live in like specific neighborhoods,
Mm-hmm.
had parents that work together, it was easier for them to kind of get together and make friends and go on play dates and hang out and go to other people's houses. For me, it was different on a lot of different levels. So, one, I looked different. And
Mm-hmm.
then another level was that, I didn't necessarily live in the same neighborhoods as some of these other people.
Mm-hmm.
So and then the other level of it was that, for some of the students that went to those schools, their parents worked together. And for the private school, a lot of those parents were either doctors or nurses or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
My dad was, uh, he was doing things at Kennedy Space Center, so completely different thing.
Mm-hmm.
So it was difficult for me to really make friends initially because of a lot of those different things. And I know looking back on it, I didn't really understand. I thought it was really because I was new and because of all those
Mm-hmm.
other things. But I do think that looking different and seeming a bit different made it more difficult for other students to approach me initially.
Mm-hmm.
I think as time went on, people knew who I was, and as people also grew up, some people tended to be more open
Mm-hmm.
and be friends with me, and they got to know me and my family, and then things just became the way that they are, like they were essentially, and we
Mm-hmm.
became friends and things like that. But I remember it was difficult the first few years to
Right.
make friends and things like that.
Right. So basically, it was just a matter of like, getting to know you, right? And just like trying to, get to the point where you're familiar and just, right. So yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then, like in terms of like your parents, right? Like why did they choose that particular school versus like maybe like public school?
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's a great question. I went to public school for, I think it's just 2 or 3 years
Hmm.
before they put me in a private school. But I think the number one priority for them was to make sure they got the best education, and they
Hmm.
felt that this private school provided um, smaller class sizes, more attention to individual students,
Hmm.
and things like that. And they didn't have to worry about other things like, you know, the things that I guess that parents would worry about with larger schools. So I and they in the school that I went to, they got a lot of really positive reviews from parents. The students that ended up graduating went to nice colleges and things like that. So I think that that was a big part of their decision making process. They just
Hmm.
wanted to make sure that that we got a really good education at this school. And
Right.
again, I feel like we did, and the teachers were great.
Hmm.
But the other piece of it was that there weren't a lot of black kids. There weren't a lot of minority kids. Well, not
That's
minority.
diversity.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
So like looking back at it, right? Like would you have wished you maybe exposed to public school a little bit, or maybe like maybe in the future, right? For your future kids, how would you choose between private school and public school that would give you like a something to think about?
Yeah, that's also a good question because I thought about that.
Hmm.
I think I would side on probably putting my kids to through public school, just for
Hmm.
the exposure of giving them the opportunity to interact with different students from different places.
Hmm.
Uh, I think that there are pros and cons, obviously, to both, like putting a kid to through private school or going to public school.
Hmm.
And, maybe someone who's gone through public school would say the opposite. But for me, I think that exposure and that interaction uh, has a real significant influence on your perception about other people and
Hmm.
how you interact with people that aren't similar to you,
Hmm.
and then opening yourself up to just being in a place where you um, have other people that you can talk to and interact with.
Hmm.
I think I would definitely consider that, and I would consider just how that person or how my child would feel at that school. I think for me, it was you're going to that school. You're gonna
Hmm.
go. You feel we know you're the like one out of five black kids in
Right.
the school, but they're gonna teach you and make sure you're good. But education is also obviously very important. Teacher quality is very important, but
Hmm.
that aspect of it also has to be taken into consideration as well. So
Right.
yeah, I think I would do that.
That's good. Yeah, because I think it gives like a good well-roundedness in terms of the kids, right? Like you get to experience different things, different cultures, different people who have different backgrounds, and I think you definitely I think you develop some kind of grit, I guess, sometimes when you're in public school, I guess sometimes. But
Mhm.
also, I'm not sure if if you had this kind of situation in private school where like maybe some kids have some kind of like like uppy mentalities maybe sometimes, or like do you like remember like if you ever see the movie like Cruel Intentions, like
Yeah.
was it like that? Was it private school like that, or was it completely different?
Yeah, no. So I think Cruel Intentions, they took their ideas from like similar experiences, from different places. But yeah, I agree. There's an attitude. I think with most schools, but definitely in private school because there's more of a atmosphere where you can see it. In public
Hmm.
school, you can, but it's blurred because there's so many and there's so many different people. But in a smaller school and definitely in a school where you have to contribute a certain amount of money to send someone to,
Mm-hmm.
You will definitely see the differences. And there were kids that had that attitude where they knew their parents had more stuff. And again, like I said, you had those kids who hung out together, who went on trips, to
Mm-hmm.
these places that other kids didn't usually go to, like they went on the ski trips and the snowboarding trips and to, uh, these countries in Europe together, right? And
Right.
for summer. And I took swimming lessons and like, went on a road trip to Chicago. So like,
Right.
uh, so you knew. And there's also a really interesting story, but my private school, they tried to cut back on this because they didn't want that attitude.
Mm-hmm.
So one way the kids used and we had uniforms, but one way the kids used to kind of show like, oh yeah, I can, add money is they would do it through their shoes, right? They would buy like the really awesome looking shoes. So the
Mm-hmm.
school said, all right, kids can only buy shoes that don't have, uh, trademarks on it, like bigger than like a dime. Uh,
Really.
yeah, but the thing was that the kids that didn't have a ton of money, and I was like one of those kids, we would go to like Kmart or JC Penney and we would buy the generic shoes, right? Like that's probably
Mm-hmm.
what the teachers and the faculty thought that all the kids would do. And the kids that had money, they would buy like the Vans. So they wouldn't have the trademark, they'd have like the stripes or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
all the like kids that had money had we knew what Vans were. Like they would have Vans, and then the kids that didn't have as much would have like, stuff from JC Penney or Kmart or whatever. So like
Okay.
I mean, and we were only in like third, fourth, fifth grade. And
Oh,
so
wow.
yes. So it was there. It was there. And I think,
Okay.
not just private school, I'm sure other schools have definitely experienced it, but for me personally, like,
It was
yeah,
more apparent, right?
yeah, it was totally, absolutely there. You could totally see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
So
like let's move on to like your college years, right? Like what did that add to your life in terms of experiences? Like did it open your eyes in terms of like diversity and like just like I think it just give you more perspective, right?
yeah, I mean, so college for me was, I say game changer. It was probably one of the best experiences of my life. I always go back to college, and look back very fondly on it. And for me, the reason why is because it brought all of those elements that I really liked, growing up, and all the things I really appreciated, and put them in an environment where I was exposed to constantly. So
Mm-hmm.
people were more open. There were a ton of, uh, different people, on campus, and just how people were, people my own age that were on this kind of same wavelength, the same mindset that
Mm-hmm.
I had about, just being cool and understanding and open was just really great. I think I was always exposed to school institutions that were very small. Even in high school, I went to a very small school. And so I went to a small private school, I went to a small high school, and then I went to a
Mm-hmm.
large university. And the university was crazy, it was great. And I met some really awesome people. I met, I became involved with, um, the Asian American Student Union, and it was so awesome. And it was awesome on the level that I was just explaining about diversity and exposure and
Mm-hmm.
mindset, but also awesome because I got to learn a lot of different things, and from different people and different events and different things that we did together, which was
Mm-hmm.
really cool. So there was that bonding agent or that experience that we all had together with people who've never done something and people who've done it before, and bringing it
Mm-hmm.
to those people as a new experience. And that was really cool. And then for me, I liked it so much that I became a part, I became more involved with the organization and try and get more people exposed to it, and so that they could kind of share a similar experience that I did.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really appreciated that as a student. I think that was such a big part of my college experience. I don't think it would have been the same without, without the Asian American Student Union, without that rich diversity and
Hmm.
people that I interacted with during that time.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I definitely agree because like when I was growing up, like I was maybe one of four Asian person, and the other Asian people that I knew were they didn't speak much Chinese or any other kind of Asian language. They spoke Spanish.
mhm.
So otherwise, I was like 98% Hispanic in school. So
Mm.
once I made it to University of Florida, I was like, whoa, there are so many people who are like similar to me, or like I was completely mind blown. I was like, it's a completely different experience. And yeah, like diversity is a very important aspect of life that people should be exposed of, and it really truly opens up other people's minds about different types of people. And I think if you were exposed to it, you probably would have certain notions about people. And yeah, it's definitely very interesting.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I absolutely do. I feel like,
Mm-hmm.
for me, and I mean, this is a big step, but
Mm-hmm.
having people exposed to different people and different cultures would help alleviate a lot of issues. If
Mm-hmm.
people just decided to travel more, go and see something different. I know
Mm-hmm.
people. We both grew up in Florida, and there are a lot of people I know that have not left the state of Florida.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, to
I
me.
can see that. I know that for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, no disrespect to anyone who decides that they don't want to. I can understand
Mm-hmm.
if they want to, but for someone who's traveled, and for someone who appreciates just wanting to, or having that desire to experience
Mm-hmm.
different things, there's a lot, and
A lot of things.
yeah, and it's, I mean, again, I enjoy that piece of it. So you know, it's definitely uh, big influence in an important piece of
Right.
how you think. I think.
Mm-hmm. So you met your wife at University of Florida, right?
Actually, I met her in high school.
Oh, high school. Okay.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Oh yes, um,
So
I
tell us
did.
about that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. She was my prom date.
Oh,
I
okay.
Yes, I tried to ask her out for homecoming,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll get two stories out of this. So my 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 side of the story is that I asked her. So I didn't ask her directly. Okay, I tried to be cool about it. I liked
Mm-hmm.
her, and she. So I liked her. She was in a history class with me, and I
Mm-hmm.
asked her if she was going with anybody. She
Mm-hmm.
told me that she was going with friends. She said
Mm-hmm.
so I asked her, "Are you going with anybody to homecoming?" She said, "I'm going with my friends." And at that
Mm-hmm.
point, I was like, okay. She just like said no. And I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's great. And just so I tried to
Uh-huh.
play cool, and I walked it off. She will say that I never tried to ask her, period, which I guess technically is true because
Yeah.
I just asked if she was going on. I didn't directly ask her if she wanted to come
Right.
with me, right? Go with me.
Right.
Uh, but so I took the L early,
Mm-hmm. Well, you
but I
kept on.
didn't
You
get
kept on.
yeah, right. Maybe it would have been different if I had asked her, directly.
Mm-hmm.
But then prom came around and I asked her directly this time. I was like, all right, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm just going to ask her straight out. So I asked her, hey, would you like to go to prom with me? And she was like, yeah. So, and, I was like, oh my God, yeah. So we went to prom, and then after prom, we dated, and then we dated from high school throughout college. And oh yes, and so the other piece of this is my wife is Chinese American,
Mm-hmm.
um, and the other piece of that is that the high school that we went to, um, she was pretty much like her family. Everybody knew her family
Mm-hmm.
in this town. So it, like when I asked her, I didn't know. I had no idea that she was this mini celebrity. I don't know. Like she was just well known. So when we started going out, she was like, "Okay, so we're going out. There's gonna be people around who are gonna notice that we're going out. So,
Hmm.
just be on the lookout for that. And I was like, oh,
Okay.
yeah. But yeah, we ended up dating through college, and it was awesome.
Hmm.
And then we took a break for quite some time after college, doing our own.
Hmm.
And then we got back together, and then we got married. So it was
Seems like a
also,
crazy ride.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But I wouldn't change any of it.
Yeah.
It was such a great thing. And it was really great to share that experience, those experiences we just talked about from college. It was
Hmm.
fantastic sharing that with her as well.
Hmm.
She played a huge influence, obviously, in me joining the Chinese American Student Association at UF, and
Hmm.
so
Okay.
yeah.
And like, so what has she learned from your like sad story? Like what has she learned about, being a biracial or, stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think the other piece of us, like, or how we met or how we got together, was that I think we both really appreciate the culture and diversity that people have within themselves. So I think we both
Hmm.
shared that. And I say that because I remember the first conversations we had were about, each of our different experiences with family, with culture, and then how, we thought about how culture and family and all those different things really interacted, and they um, how they work with people.
Hmm.
We both ended up majoring in sociology at the University of Florida because we were very passionate about that interaction. So
Hmm.
for her, I think the thing that maybe she learned, and she could say it better than I could, but I think it's that I think we just kind of more deeply started to understand each other and each other's kind of individual um, personalities, and how culture has shaped that, how growing up has shaped who we are, and that
Hmm.
those different pieces of that culture have really uh, created the person that we've ended up becoming, or are evolving
Hmm.
as we're learning more about each other and our cultures. So
Right.
I think we're both learning more about each other through that, and we're continuing to do that as we're interacting more with each other's families.
Okay. Cool. So like, so for my final question for you, right?
Mm.
Like, what are some advices for people around, struggling with being biracial, and how would you advise them to live their life, or like maybe live a more, sane life where you're not feeling as lonely, or just what kind of advice would you give them?
Yeah, that's a great question. One advice I would give is, I know it'll be tough. It's tough for everybody, because I know everybody goes through this crisis of identity and wanting to know who you are, and it's a
Hmm.
continual journey, and it's something that you grow to understand. And the one advice I will give for people who are multiracial or biracial is that I know that it's especially difficult for you, because you're kind of trying to understand which side of the fence maybe you are on, and that the added pressure that society or your community might give you might be wrong. Some people will say, "Hey, you should be this," and other people will say, "Hey, you shouldn't be this." But in the end, I think uh, you need to just really listen to yourself, and just really know that the journey doesn't stop. Just because someone thinks you're something, or you look like someone, or you're supposed to be a certain way, that doesn't mean that doesn't have to be true. You
Hmm.
are you, and everybody kind of grows into the person that they want to become. And I think that's the most important thing. Understanding who you want to be, and knowing that how you grew up and where you come from plays a part in that. And I think
Hmm.
that you shouldn't forget where you're from, but you shouldn't also let other people put you where they think you need to be. And I think if you keep that mindset, you'll get to where you want to be. essentially.
Good. Very true. Yeah. I thank you for your, your experience and telling your story. And I think it was very inspirational.
Oh,
Well, I
thanks.
hope you had fun, so
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Again, I really appreciate you guys doing this. This is
mhm,
such a cool thing, and I think especially now, a lot of people
yeah.
are really wanting to understand and know more about other experiences. So thank you for really
Mhm,
opening this up.
yep. Well, guys, thank you for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.